Wonderful, wonderful. Well, here we are at the end of day 3, the close of day 3 here in room 1 for World Unity Week. What a amazing day of oneness it's been. We just had the most gorgeous panel all around the Cosmic Madonna. And now we have something very, very special to follow, which I'm so excited that this is part of World Unity Week again, after playing such an instrumental role over World Unity Week and the 99 days last year. Danielea Castell is back with the listening field. So let me say this, the title of today's program, which is nature and the
recording in progress
oneness. And it's interesting, a kaleidoscope is a tube-shaped instrument that makes patterns when mirrors reflect bits of glass. When you turn the kaleidoscope, new patterns form from the same shapes, put together in new ways. So we're going to be exploring that today with nature and the kaleidoscope of oneness. Tonight we have Danielea Castell from the listening field, Hilary van Welter from the Mad Hatter Summit, and Shrouk Gamal by video from Yellow versus Blue. These 3 women are from very different walks of life and are exploring how their initiatives support the formation of new patterns of oneness and transform life as we know it through the current portals of nature as the environment, mental illness, and mental health struggles. Danielea, it's so great to have you and the listening field back in World Unity Week.
Thank you so much, Ben. It's an honor to be here. I would like to acknowledge, first of all, that I am on the unceded territory of the Snuneymuxw people in Nanaimo on Vancouver Island, British Columbia. I also wish to acknowledge all of the people, some of whom are here with us, and all of the nature elders around the world who have been instrumental in developing this listening field. And there are more coming to be part of the listening field team in its transition. And I just really hold my hands up to each and every one of us who have created this magnificent vehicle for interbeing connection. So I welcome the slideshow to begin, and I'll take you on a little journey. There is a quote just before that, if you will. There we are. So oneness, meaning unity and wholeness. And then one of my most favorite quotes in the world by David Spangler, who said that for humanity, wholeness is the goal and partnership with nature is the pathway. So next slide, please. So the listening field is a co-creative field. Maybe next slide, please. Here we go. So the listening field is defined as a ceremonial space in which humans and nature elders come together. And it's simply like a Zoom room like this. And when we invite the nature elders in, then you can communicate with them and you can co-create with them. I'm just going to there we are. And so the origins of the listening field were, like many things, born during lockdown, during the pandemic. And I had been building relationships for many years and visiting my nature elders in person. And of course, when lockdown happened, we could no longer travel. So I soon discovered that because we had built these deep bonds, that I could open a ceremonial space, invite them to come, they would, and we could continue to dialogue. Of course, I soon discovered that we can all do this. And so in 2020, I was mostly opening water fields, and some were with group. In fact, the very first one, which was with a group, connected with World Unity Week in 2020, Water Day. And then mostly for the rest of the year, they were private listening fields. And so I began to understand that there was this wealth of wisdom within our nature elders and within the fields we created with them that we could access if we only asked. So 2021 saw the water field evolve into more of an eco-social research format. We were going inside the waters of our own body to dialogue with the waters there and consult about the ethics of behavior. And what I learned in those 16 listening fields that were 3 hours each, I learned how to host the field. not hold the field, but host the field. And then I also was instructed by the elders that the nature or the characteristics of the listening field are that it's open, emergent, responsive, and evolving. 2022 arrived and the listening field went global. And some of you were absolutely there and very instrumental in this part. And so there were three firsts for me with the listening field. So we got our first mission, which was to organize the partnership ceremony on June 18th of Humans and Nature Elders, which we did. The first partnership, so partnering with Unity Earth, with Ben, with World Unity Week Community, and with eco-governance. And then the third first was to actually receive our first commission for consultations. And that was from Dr. Shelley Ostroff, and an invitation to hold a series of listening fields, 7 in a row, one for World Unity, one for leading up to Peace Week. And in that, we were consulting with the Foundations of Life and the 7 core needs. And again, as some of you know, magic just flowed from that. Just profound messages and wisdom came from the elders. And so this brings us to 2023, where the listening field is evolving again, and it's evolved from an event to a social enterprise. And we're in the middle of a branding process right now and website build with a young agency in Toronto called Salt Plus. And yes, we are opening listening fields with our branding agency, with the nature elders, and involving them in the process around determining symbols and colors and energy. Next slide, please. So essentially what we're discovering is that the listening field is a concierge service. Could you have the next slide, please, Paul? It's a concierge service. And basically what we do is we organize these ceremonial dialogues for humans and nature elders who wish to explore the frontiers of co-creative partnership, to conduct joint research, and to also discover new frameworks for current issues. Next slide, please. So who are the nature elders? Well, the obvious question is these are the rocks and the trees and the mountains and the rivers and the lakes and the streams and the clouds that we all know and love. And the nature elder term is just a subjective term that I invite all of us to use to describe these relatives. And I coined that phrase in 2020 when I began to talk to other people about what I had been doing. And so what is also clear, I know for many of you already, is that these nature elders are sentient, they're intelligent, and they're willing and able to communicate with us. And then the other thing you'll notice in my PowerPoint presentation today is that I always capitalize the names of nature and also the nature elders. And that's a form of respect for me. And also just to mimic that we capitalize our first names. And so I offer that same respect or salutation to the nature elders. Next slide, please. So why do the nature elders come into the listening field? It's really simple. God help them. They love us. They love us and they wish to help. And we love them. And when we call them, they come. In fact, one of the most common things that people say after they've done their listening in the field and they begin to share is the nature elders, the first thing that they said was, "Thank you for inviting us. We've been waiting." We hear it over and over and over again. Next slide, please. So there's 6 steps in the listening field experience. One is to hear the call. The call comes through a human. It comes from a nature elder to a human. It can rise up in your own heart. But there's a call, there's a reason, there's a purpose, there's a focus. 2, preparation and consent. Consent is really important, meaning that I always ensure that the nature elders involved in the consultation are willing to be present. And so that's a very important step. And if they aren't, then we're asking who would like to come forward to be in this dialogue with this particular consultation. Step 3, the listening field session itself. Step 4, documenting the messages. This is really important. We receive a lot of beautiful information, and there's a wonderful process to be able to distill what messages are really appropriate for this particular consultation. And then for step 5, the interpretation and the meaning making, one of the things we're really understanding is that the energy signature, there's an energy signature that comes with these messages. And it seems to be connected with holographic knowledge. And because of that, it takes time, it takes focus, and takes deep listening to actually discover what the meaning is behind this message, and then to interpret and apply it and strategize it for the particular situation. And that, of course, brings us to step 6, which is develop and integrate strategy. Thank you. Next slide, please. So what is the call of the listening field? It's really, really simple. Show up, listen, trust what you hear, allow yourself to be changed, come into co-creative partnership with the nature elders in every aspect of your life and in every realm of society, education, business, economics, et cetera, healthcare, and more. Next slide. So what excites me the most about the listening field? I never know what's going to happen, who's going to show up, who I'm going to meet. This is a perfect example. This was a consultation on biodiversity, and octopus showed up for this individual. They never had a relationship before, had never had a conversation with them at all, and boom, octopus showed up like this big in this person's conscious awareness and received this beautiful message. So the other thing that's really exciting about the listening field is that once the field is opened and other people have invited in their nature elders, you can actually meet and communicate with the nature elders that are in the field. So I, for example, when you saw that picture of the beautiful waterfall for the mission, that's Grandfather Iguazu. I met him in a listening field, but he was brought in by my friend Andrea, who lives in Argentina. So that's also a really exciting thing. Then the last thing I want to say about this particular slide is that we can all converse with the same nature elder and receive very different messages. And so that also has a value that I'm going to speak to in the next slide, please. So the thing to remember about these messages is that they're an alchemy of the human and nature partnership. They're an alchemy. Now, it sometimes happens that a nature elder will speak directly to you in that way that, we say, God spoke to me. Then nature elders speak to us like that. Sometimes, but more often than not, when we're in that heart link with them, the flow of information is very free. So there's images, there's sensations, there's textures, etc. And then as the human, I receive those and I formulate them, in this case, into language and then into interpretation. So again, it's an alchemy, and it's really a prime example of this co-creative partnership that I believe that we're only touching the very, very tip of at this point. Next slide, please. It's possible to have epiphanies and actually transcendental experiences in the listening field. When you're in the heart link with a nature elder, they actually recalibrate our energy signature. And this particular individual was asking this question, which was very relevant last year. How do I get to this place of peace through unity in just 99 days? And boom, instantly she became a cloud. This person wasn't even able to speak, but I could tell on the screen that something big had happened. And so I spoke with them later and then found out that this was her experience. Next slide, please. This message is what I call a pattern interrupt, or a Zen koan, and I still haven't unraveled it. Fresh, clean air. And this was part of the 7 core needs. The question was, how do we ensure that all humans and animals have access to fresh, clean air? This is what someone heard. What you do to me, you do to yourself. What you do to each other, you do to me. Zen Master Air. Next slide, please. So why is the listening field urgently needed right now? 1, we have a wisdom gap. We've been living inside a paradigm, a way of thinking that's, very siloed. Human has been living separate from nature, at least non-Indigenous people have. The nature elders are literally standing by and waiting to fill that wisdom gap with us. Interbeing communication. The field itself empowers all of our ability to hear and feel and communicate. Even my level of nature communication is up-leveled in the listening field. So the potential to help people actually wake up inside their own connection is really high. Youth are really struggling these days, and youth need allies. And this is a call that's getting louder and louder for me in my own world. And so making it easy for youth to connect with nature elders like trees who are reliable and stable and loving and reflect us in our fullness and our wholeness. And the trees are not part of the dissolving paradigm. So again, this is a whole potential, I believe, for providing support for youth that's actually empowering. And it's not coming from a human-only source. Next one, bust separation illusion. Let me tell you, the minute a nature elder talks to you directly, that idea that nature is a resource, or water is a resource, or a tree is wood or lumber, that's over with. That's not going to happen. Oh, can we go back to the other slide, please, Paul? So that illusion is separated. And once that's happened, we know that we're connected. Co-creating a new earth, we're doing that. The new earth is rising. I believe that we need to have research and consultations with the nature elders in order to ensure truly, not only that we don't make the same mistakes again, but that we go even beyond, that we really start to step into the potential that we were designed as co-creators, full co-creators with creation and with the nature elders. And then lastly, the living library of nature wisdom. This piece is part of the vision. I was given this instruction early on that we are to create some kind of a repository, like a library, for these messages that we receive from the elders, so that they are indexed and they are available for anyone to access when they need them. Thank you. Next slide. So this is a message that I'd really like to take a moment for us to just really breathe in. It comes from some of the most profound nature elders I've ever had the absolute humble pleasure to even be acquainted with. And this is the Council of Mirror Grove. It is 12 sequoia trees living in Sequoia National Park. And these elders are heart bonded with a woman named Esther Penner, who lives in Los Angeles. And this is the message that they gave, one of the first ones that came through during World Unity Week, day one. We are all unique life expressions living as one. Allow our electromagnetic frequencies to align. Give and receive life as one. And again, you can see how almost every sentence here you could meditate on for a few months to just really deepen into, what does that look like, as an incarnate being? What does that mean to me? Next slide, please. So what's the call right now? The call from the nature elders is to bring the listening field on land. So this is some pictures from one that I did 2 weeks ago in a very ancient forest here on the west coast of Vancouver Island. That's a beautiful, beautiful, stately old grandmother cedar. And the charm that happens when we go in person, different from online, is we have, for example, we had 2 small 5-year-old children who were just enthralled to be involved with us, played all day in the forest. We had other events going on. And then the picture on the left, of course, is we're recording our messages and drawing them in on paper now. The other calls that are important just to share at this moment is that there's a call from the Amazon. There's a call from the Amazon, and I have started a little bit of that organizing. And then there's also a call for the Arctic, an open one with the Arctic. And then the call that I'm hearing from the human field is a call from youth. And I'll say more in a moment about a program that's happening. And then the call that I'm hearing a very, very large, loud call from business. very loud call from business and business organizations, et cetera. And I suspect that it has to do with the fact that really the listening field provides this opportunity for businesses and organizations to access the wisdom of the nature elders who are embedded in this larger ecosystem. They live in the larger ecosystem. So when we do research and consultations with them, they are providing that kind of information that I believe can really help us discover ways of living on Earth that we haven't even imagined yet. And last slide, please. So what's coming up next? Tomorrow, we have a listening field with Canadian wildfires. So we're inviting in all the nature elders who are affected by the fires, and of course, a fire himself. And then the Nature in Me is a brand new pilot program that I'm partnering with Yellow versus Blue on. It's for youth ages 17 to 29. And the application process is still open. It closes on Wednesday. So if you know anyone of that age group, this is a program that's going to walk them through the process of making a friend with a nature elder for mental health and well-being. And we'll see a little promo video on this at the very end. So that's what I have for you today as a presentation. And I just love to reinforce the fact that I really believe that everything is possible with nature elders through the heart bond. Over to you, Hilary. You're muted.
Thanks, Danielea, and I have had the great pleasure of working with Danielea for over the last year in the listening field, and it's been an absolute joy to watch how this has evolved. I'm here tonight to actually talk about the Mad Hatter Summit, and I'm really thrilled to be both with Shrouk and Danielea, and hopefully we'll have a little time at the end to start looking at the intersections. I come into the Mad Hatter Summit bringing 5 decades of systems change, deep systems change, working on edges, frontiers, and healing into the work that I'm going to share with you tonight. I've been inspired by my youngest son, and who has been betrayed and traumatized by the mental health system. And I have learned that he is one of probably thousands and maybe millions who have been subjected to treatment that is not appropriate with the nature of who he is. And many of the things that Danielea talked about just now in terms of listening to the trees and having them talk to you and talk back are things that people like my son have been locked up for. So I think that it's time that we had a really good look at where the possibilities are for shifting. And with this inspiration, rather than being trapped inside a victim's place, I chose to do something. And so in the pandemic, I co-founded an organization called Call to the Mothers with 2 other people, Brett Wachowski and Ramila Verma. And we undertook research to look at where were the tipping points of a broken system, where were the pain points, but also where were the new possibilities. And we conducted a beautiful pilot in Zomba, Malawi in March of 2022. At the same time, we ran a series of online research, and finally came to the conclusion that we really needed to mount a significant effort to explore some of the findings that we had found. So if you could start my slideshow, please. So this began with the Mad Hatter Summit, and we are birthing what we call the next paradigm. And it was going to be happening on August 12th, 2023, and I'll be telling more about that, but a little bit more about the background. Next slide, please. So we asked ourselves a series of questions because this is what was coming to us after doing the research we did. What if the epidemic of crisis, pain, hopelessness, and powerlessness are actually natural responses to the world we consider normal? Next slide. What if these were indicators of a broader and deeper shift of seismic systemic global breakdowns that were already underway? Next slide. And what if, here's the cruncher, what if those who are deemed to have a mental illness and addiction are in fact some of the most critical pioneers and adventurers of a new era of life and well-being. Next slide. And what if these individuals bring new genius to transform intergenerational and collective traumas so that we can all co-create a better world for all? Next one. And what if the solutions we so desperately need are already percolating all around us? They're already here. We just need a new context in which to see them. And here's the real one. And what if we are being called to move from a biomedical paradigm that we're meant to, that there's an illness here, click, to one of evolution. So from illness to evolution. So this is the paradigm shift we've been exploring. And a fellow I really like who puts paradigm shifts into an interesting graphic says that there's a way of looking at a paradigm shift that would cause one to see the same information in an entirely different way. So is it a duck or is it a rabbit? And the paradigm shift that we're looking at is the one from the pathology to the evolution as a whole series of indicators down. And if you could click through, that's great. We look at their psychotic breakdowns, and then we look at diagnosis of mental pathological illness, for an example, schizophrenia and bipolar. That's what my son was classified with. Clinical treatment through medication, psychiatry, and therapies. Often these are done without consent. And there's a long history now that we're starting to see and research on this. It's deemed to be a lifelong mental illness that you will have for duration. What a life sentence to be given. And the next one is social impact, often homelessness, addiction, incarceration, and isolation, and death. And then the lifelong suffering is the culmination of that. So we took the same symptoms, what we call look at the symptoms, and we said, what if we look at this condition with a different lens? And instead of seeing psychotic breakdown, we actually are seeing evolutionary breakthrough. What if instead of doing a diagnosis of mental illness and pathology, we started to see that this was something else? There were signs of human systems change, including spiritual emergence and neurodiversity, which we desperately need. Instead of clinical treatment, we are looking at a whole ecosystem of diverse and alternative practices, which would be to be able to heal, but also to unleash the gifts and human potential that are sitting trapped inside, and to help that person and us evolve. And instead of lifelong mental illness, we would start to see regenerated lives. And the social impact going from homelessness and death to community contribution, well-being, and innovation. And instead of lifelong suffering, we're looking at best life, including healing, resilience, and joy. So we looked at the same situation and said, what if we were to look at it with a different lens? And so we've started to focus on the column on the right and started to look at how do we start to mobilize this lens in how we can actually start to make the fundamental changes. Next slide, please. So we are birthing the next paradigm through the Mad Hatter Summit on August 12th of 2023. And we're going to explore and research the breakthroughs that are happening around the world, and then co-creating new ecosystems that inspire a new story of regeneration, well-being, and best life for all. So we're looking at a very fundamental breakthrough. And how we're doing this is with a really cool process called a Taste of Wonderland that is also a baby of the pandemic that was co-birthed with a wonderful gentleman by the name of Alex Pantia in Melbourne, Australia, who showed me one day a map of Wonderland. And I'd never seen Wonderland on a map. And I thought, wow, this is a really cool treasure hunt to look at it on a map. And so I took the various areas on the map and I created a process. And and this is a process of discovery as well as co-creation. So we'll click through it and see the various stages. These are all photos, by the way, from our pilot that we held in Malawi last year. So the first stop on the way is the hallway of doors. And in the story of Alice in Wonderland, she falls down the rabbit hole and then gets herself incredibly frustrated trying to find the right door and the right size. And so this is where we start to look at the cracks and the breakdowns, but also the tipping points where change is really possible. And in the story, Alice cried so loudly and so much that she created a pool of tears. So this is where we actually go into the grief. And I learned through the pandemic. I've designed processes for, again, 5 decades, but I found how important it was to honor and recognize the grief and to allow for the vulnerability of the grief. And so we look at the grief and what's dying, but also what's waiting to be born. And in the looking glass, we start to look at what are some new possibilities, some new wow ideas, some new modalities. And then what we do is we put them all together, next slide, please, in the Mad Hatter Tea Party, where we take an element from the hallway of doors. And if you want to click through, we've got pictures that go with this from the pilot. Thank you. We take an element of the hallway of doors, an element from the pool of tears, an element from the looking glass, and bibbity bobbity boo. What do you get? A new idea. And this is how the process that we tested this in all 5 kinds of places. This is how we generate next paradigm projects. So what we're going to be doing on August 12th, if we could, next slide, please. Sorry, I'm ahead of myself. This is an example. No, next slide. That's great. Thank you. This is an example of one of the ideas that came out of our research was that one of the, so could you go back? Just one sec. One of the issues is that crisis intervention is really critical. And often now we just have so many issues that we have with police and whatever else. So that was a very different unit that was designed. And so we're running these Tastes of Wonderland in 5 different locations around the world simultaneously on the same day, just like Live Aid. And then we're going to have a virtual one. And then we're going to curate all of that. And next slide, please. And we're going to actually start to mobilize a change because we all know at least one person who, like the salmon, needs to find a pocket of air that takes them against the mainstream current to the place where they can create new possibilities. And next slide. And the Mad Hatter Summit is the precious pocket of air that can actually save lives. And the final slide is looking at that the Mad Hatter Summit is part of an ecosystem where we are sparking Wonderland. We are then have a whole infrastructure around Wonderland for incubating, and then we finally have a Mad Hatter. We have a studio, which I will talk about if we have time. So thank you. That is the Mad Hatter Summit. Thanks very much. Going back to Danielea.
Ooh, thank you so much. Just want to move my body and digest some of that, all that color and all that opportunity. Thank you. So I'd like to just introduce Shrouk Gamal. She is the founder of Yellow versus Blue, and she is very adept at speaking for herself and will do so in the next 5-minute video. I just wanted to acknowledge that she is currently probably in the air flying back from Norway. She's been at a small island there as part of a youth intercultural conference. And it's the Thorvald Stoltenberg seminar at Utoya. And they're there to explore challenges and opportunities in diverse societies, helping young people build open and tolerant societies. And this is also part of the work that Shrouk does as a young leader. And so let's hear from her directly. Once we get the sound going, can we back up to the beginning, Paul? That would be great.
An organization that supports youth consistently. And I work as an editor with a... Hello, everyone. So my name is Shrouk. I'm from Cairo, Egypt, but I'm based in Spain at the moment. I am the founder and director of Yellow versus Blue, a non-profit mental health and well-being organization registered in the UK, which is crazy because just 2 years ago it was a campaign, but now it's an organization that supports youth consistently. And I work as an editor with a UK magazine to support the refugees and asylum seekers, activists and volunteers to raise their voices and to speak up for them. So I'm super glad to be able to have the chance to speak with you more about Yellow versus Blue and why it started, what we are doing. At this time of my life, there were everyday news that youth took off his life, and they just found that they are super stressed from university. They don't know what to do in the future. They don't know how to just have control over their life because of different circumstances that they have, or specific reasons that we don't know. And every day we just have this news. Youth committed a suicide over Cairo Tower. So they were even choosing places in Cairo that it's literally not going to give them any chance to be alive after committing a suicide. And it was super devastating. And so I thought about like, what's wrong then? If every day we're getting news that there is a young person is taking away their own life, then what do we have in the future in Egypt or even in the world? I started the fellowship with them. They prepared me how to be an effective leader, how to start my community project, and they assigned me a mentor for a year. The name idea came from Van Gogh because I'm really obsessed with Van Gogh paintings and stories, especially after knowing that he passed away. And there are many stories behind it, that he took his own life. I just felt that this person was in a real depression. And I read all his letters to his brother, and I got super, super impacted emotionally from his story. And I found that in his last in his last painting, The Starry Night, he used different colors, which was blue, orange, yellow, and every color he used, it means something. And I made a research and I found that he meant yellow, that it's a sunrise, a new day, and blue, it means depression or dark days in English language. And we did amazing campaigns, podcasts, story campaigns. People were coming from different backgrounds, sharing their stories, why they are struggling with mental health, and what do they need from people to start supporting. And then since this time, Yellow versus Blue never stopped growing. And I don't know what's happening, but I just find that everything is just pushing Yellow versus Blue to keep going. Many people don't know yet that Yellow versus Blue is a place that we are working on the roots of the young people. So we make them feel that this is a space for you to feel safe, to find new ways for you to survive. And after surviving, you're finding the beauty in the world, to keep living and to keep shining. We have published a book about mental health. We give space for people to write and to show their talents in writing. We give space for people to start creating short films about mental health struggles so that it can be more interactive, so they express their feelings and at the same time they raise awareness. We keep going with our artistic programs, nature, with Danielea, and the youth exchanges that we're making. What excites me the most is that how it's growing so fast and with quality, not quantity. So seeing how many programs we have done, but how the impact is super, super doubles than what we expected, and how the youth are going to implement this project and actually using the knowledge that they got. So it really makes me super excited to just keep walking on the same rhythm, not to go so fast, not to go so slow, but to go the same way that we're going, with quantity, not quality. So I'm super proud of that. We want a world with youth feeling safe to express their feelings, their emotions, to know that there is a safe space that they can go to. And if there is not, they can have themselves as a safe space for them. In the next 5 years, to have Yellow versus Blue space, I don't want an organization that looks professional, that there are employees, but I want a mental health space. I just really imagine it right now when I'm speaking, that I want this space in the nature, that people can gather and connect with nature and themselves at the same time.
Thank you, Shrew. Thank you, young sister. Hilary, would you like to just take us into a short discussion? We really wanted to understand a bit about these intersections of oneness, and maybe Diana Claire also has a question too, or a response.
Yes, I'd like to quickly bring in Diana Claire, but I do want to say that we did have a wonderful conversation with Shrouk in the preparation of this dialogue. And one of the fascinating things that we talked about was how much we all wanted place-based initiatives. That while the internet is a wonderful place for connection and to be able to have access to resources and to be with each other, that we in ways that we can interconnect across the world is fantastic. But we all talked about how important it actually is to be in a place. How she mentioned about the fact she wanted to see Yellow versus Blue become in locations around the world, and Story Living Studios is exactly the same thing. It's having places and spaces that you can actually be in to be able to, and inside with nature. So nature was again where the intersection is really in place-based, and looking at where the opportunities are to create these places in neighborhoods, in farms, in various locations around the world where people can come and break down so they can break through and be actually, these would be the incubators of the future in terms of some of our most brilliant talent is now trapped inside bodies that are heavily medicated. And so the intersections are, again, with nature as being one of the primary, loves us unconditionally, and a place to be able to let down the barriers, to open up to the new possibilities, and to explore your inner nature so that you can actually be part of the greater change that the world is desperately wanting. So much of the tools and people we need are sitting trapped. And so these are ways of unleashing them. So I see that as the greatest intersection, is this release through this amazing, amazing intelligence and wisdom from nature. So I think, but Diana Claire.
Yes.
Hello.
Well, thank you both. I've loved the presentation. Even I know some of it beforehand, but it was so clear tonight. So thank you both. It was really beautiful. It is beautiful. I just came from a meeting with, so my question is actually immediate, like right now. I just came from a gathering with a mom whose 21-year-old son is suffering deeply, and he's highly, 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 highly sensitive and very vulnerable. And he just wants to disconnect from everything. So I was thinking, as you talked about your course, the Danielea that you're about to do with youth, it would be a really great opportunity for him. However, he doesn't want to engage at all online or with any electromagnetic things. I was wondering if you found a way to actually connect with these youth who are so sensitive. We don't have all those safe spaces yet. So there's a passageway still. And I just wondered if, I would like to say something to my friend, who's the mom of this 21-year-old. So it's a right now question.
I hear you, and I feel you, and I feel him, and I feel them. The first thing that comes to mind for me is, or at least what I saw, is this invitation to actually be on Mother Earth, to take your shoes and socks off, and to really take those people who are having difficulty engaging, especially with various aspects of mainstream society, that being in actual physical contact with Mother Earth, especially bare feet and earth, for periods of time every day is really, really helpful. And just intuitively, that's what's coming to me. And what you're speaking to, though, is there is this call to come back in person. This is what's happening. I hear it. I'm doing it here on Vancouver Island. And it just, I think that one of the benefits also for bringing nature and sensitive people together, whether we're just struggling or we're really, really in crisis, is that nature knows how to be present with us in a nonverbal way. And it's not, nature is not, the nature elders are not an idea, they're a presence. And I think that having, just bringing people together, even without facilitation, that there's a way that the nature elders can help settle the nervous systems, can help them calm, help them connect, not to humans necessarily, but connect to the web of life through the tree elders, through the earth, through the wind, through the touch of water, that can start to restore a sensory awareness and connection. So it's that finding that place of belonging that can come from a very non-verbal. I mean, this is what saved my life. I was one of those beings. But fortunately, the elders called me and I heard and I went, and they became my family. So that would be, in the short term, feet on the earth. That's feet on the earth, hands on the bark.
And what I would suggest is we have a generation of young men that are in crisis now, and it's a generation. And it is, it's requiring a very different kind of approach. What I've learned is I would get in the car with my son and we would drive to a trail because it was important to get out of the environment around the neighborhood. And we would go to a different place, a different trail, and we would walk, and we would take the dog, and he would walk, and he would walk, and he would walk, and not necessarily with me, because I can't keep up anyway. But we found we would go to different locations and we would try different outdoor spaces, because it's the variety that is needed. You don't necessarily want to go in your own backyard, but you do want to see, you do want to go to a lake. And then maybe the next time you want to go to a valley. And then the next time you want to go, and the more that there's the variety of outdoor spaces provided with the opportunity, as Danielea says, to be in nature will talk. And it will guide to the next stop. But also, Diana Claire, have them call me, reach out to me, because definitely the young men situation that I've been through for many years is one that and it gets to a point where gradually you're ready to have conversations with other people. But right now, as a mom, it's being the mom, driving. Driving like you used to drive them when they were 8 years old, and take them to different places and experience different things in nature.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hilary. So we're coming up. Are there any other comments or questions before we play a 2-minute video?
We do have a little extra time, don't we? Because we started late.
That's true. Yeah. So we're absolutely open to comments or questions about any of the presentations, or, the intersections of oneness between the three projects.
I guess one thing I want to reiterate one more time is the intersection is how what you spoke about, and how, and how amazing it is. Because whenever I'm in a listening field, it's just joyous, and you never know who's going to show up. And they've got such great senses of humor. They really do. They make me laugh all the time. They bring such wisdom, and so that is amazing. And yet, when my son is interviewed by a psychiatrist and said that he talks to the elements, he talks to the trees, he hears things back, he is kept in for 72 hours of observation, and he is forced medication. So I just wanted to reiterate how interesting it is that, we're trying to asking people to now come into their true nature, come into their true self, to find this beautiful connection. And yet, what we also do when people are in the midst of a spiritual emergence or emergency, we slap them into hospitalization and medication, and we diagnose them immediately, even though many of them are not pathological at all. I'm not saying that drugs are not important and medication isn't not important for various people. I'm not saying hospitalization isn't right for certain people. Yes, it definitely is. But now it's the only default, and it's the only thing we do. So Danielea, what do you think about that? The fact is that on one side we've got this the need to emerge, to be who we really are, and to allow ourselves to be in this beautiful communion and relationship, and yet what our Western and other societies do is shut us down.
Tell me the question you're asking.
So I'm asking you what you're like. There's the intersection. Is that where the listening field is the place to be able to really explore this beautiful relationship, to be in communion with the nature elders, and yet the mental health system is saying that is not an appropriate relationship to have.
Understood. I do really feel, especially in this context, that the listening field can be very instrumental in helping to both normalize telepathic communication and interbeing communication, to normalize it, and also to bring this kind of knowledge and information into more mainstream recognition. Our Indigenous cultures and people are, that kind of knowledge is now being recognized more and more. We got scientific, we've got the Indigenous or traditional knowledge. I think that the listening field and listeners like us, nature communicators, we're accessing more current knowledge. I would almost venture to call it evolutionary knowledge. Because, the one thing that's clear about the messages that I've mentioned or touched on already is that when we receive multiple different answers to a single inquiry, it's not only is it pointing to the diversity of knowledge and wisdom that's available, but it also kind of busts that illusion that there's ever any one right answer. Mm-hmm. Right? In science, they tend to want to find a right answer and then make sure it's repeatable. And then, oh, great, we have something we can repeat over and over. But I don't know that necessarily that's very helpful at this time where we're evolving so quickly and so fast. We actually need current information and current knowledge. So I think, again, as I said, the more we talk about nature communication, the more we demonstrate how normal and natural it is. Then we start to relax around.
Right. Yeah. And I think what that intersection point is so beautiful is it's both evolution. They both, you're talking about evolutionary wisdom that is coming, that's being very current on current day and current situations, that comes from ancient places, but it's very modern context in which it's being brought. At the same time, the individuals that we deem to be the evolutionary navigators that have been deemed mentally ill and diagnosed with disease are in fact the evolutionary navigators. So we're both, again, the intersection point of oneness is evolution, which I think is a really, really important and critical point. And the whole idea of what you talked about diversity, being neurodiverse and having a range of different ways in which the brain patterns and the body patterns. And we also look at the fact the brain isn't only one element. We've got the three brain system. So we've got the head, heart, and gut. And being able to really work with that system in terms of understanding, tapping into the uniqueness and diversity, energetic and neurodiversity that's available, and finding tools and environments that support individuals to, first of all, they have to release the trauma of being treated in the system and society the way they have. And then they get ready to be able to come into their gift. And again, I think nature is there as such an incredible, loving guide and mentor and relative. Like none of your own relatives may want to be around you, but at least grandmother tree wants to hang out with you. And sometimes that's the saving grace.
Oh yeah, I know that in person. And just to bring it back to our theme as we're coming to the close here, is that we're really talking about wholeness, remember? So there's been parts of us that we have said, no, that's not okay. Only this is okay, right? So coming back into wholeness and the oneness. And I loved there was something you said in one of your emails, Ben, just, about oneness, about, embracing our differences and those that are different, And so I was thinking about a recent case study around endangered species in which we opened listening fields. And it turned out that the ugly, small creatures living at the bottom of the ocean, they had this wisdom and wanted to be heard. And so I thought of them when you mentioned them, Ben.
Well, the other thing about them were because they were very loud, and they said that don't ignore the uglies, and it made a lot of sense because the uglies were given the best wisdom because nobody wanted to go near them. So they could hold on to as much wisdom as possible and be safe. It was safe with the uglies because nobody was going to go look at them. And, and that's how they humor. That's the kind of humor they bring into the listening field. It's like, yeah, nobody wanted to come near us, so they gave us all the good stuff.
Ben, any comments for you before we go to the last video?
Oh, I just love the interdisciplinary cross-pollination that's happening here. What a rich and amazing conversation. It's great, in the spirit that everything is connected, to be bringing things together that are, so you would seem on the surface kind of disparate and distinct, and that you are really, through this experience showing how interconnected all of this is, our relationship to the nature elders, mental health, such a huge challenge globally around the world. So thank you so much for bringing that all together. In terms of the ugly ones, I had the privilege just recently of being in the Serengeti in Tanzania. And they have the famous Big Five, which is, the rhinoceros and the elephants and the lions, etc. But they also have what's called the Ugly Five. And the Ugly Five is the hyenas and the vultures and, they're not the most looking. I don't know if the warthogs qualify, I can't remember. But, as we know, the ecosystem really, the role that is played by the so-called Ugly Five is just as powerfully important and impactful as anybody else. So here's to the ugly ones in the deep and up on high and everywhere else. And thank you so much for that, Danielea. And it was just amazing to have, you host the listening field here again in World Unity Week, and to bring Hilary in the way that you have, and to host this conversation also with the beautiful video there that we had from Shrouk, Gamal. So really great collaboration coming together, beautiful stuff. I think there's one more video to play, but thank you. This has been a beautiful session.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for inviting us. So yes, what we have is a promo video for Nature and Me, and this has been put together by Ahmed. And Ahmed is one of the volunteers. Everybody's volunteer with Yellow versus Blue. It's incredible what they're doing. I'm so thrilled to be working with them. So this is a 2-minute little gem that is to promote the Nature and Me pilot program. So take it away, Paul.
Have you ever wished you had a special friend? Someone who loves you unconditionally, just the way you are. Someone who is wise and funny, who is there for you when you need them, just as you are there when they need you. Hi, I'm Danielea Castell from the Listening Field, and I am honored to have had special friends like these for more than 15 years. What is unique about my friends is that they are individual trees, rivers, and mountains who I know. Now, having two-way conversations with a tree or a river may sound unusual to you, but people who live close to the land have been communicating with the natural world for thousands of years, and you can too. It is truly natural for all of us. Developing a friendship with a nature elder offers you the opportunity to receive the acceptance, love, and support you seek. My nature elders have helped me to listen with my heart, transform my judgments of humanity, forgive more easily, and discover my life purpose. What if they can help you too? The nature elders of Mother Earth are willing and waiting for you. Who are you called to befriend? Join us and discover how to open your mind and body to this soulful connection with nature.
Nature and Me, that was beautiful. That was just exquisite and gorgeous. And we've called up Mary from the Zoom room here because I don't know if you can do a whole picture just quickly, Peter, there on Mary. I want to see this extraordinary tree. There we go. There we go. Have a look at that. I didn't want to finish today, Mary, without giving you an opportunity to, my goodness, have a look at that. Could you tell us a few words about this beautiful, this amazing being?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of my nature elder friends, and she's called the Angel Oak. And she's on Johns Island, which is right off Charleston, South Carolina. She's quite famous. She has her own Wikipedia page, and you can go visit her. But she is considered one of the biggest and oldest southern live oaks east of the Mississippi.
Oh my goodness! And Mary, without putting you on the spot, there, would you be willing to maybe bring a message from this beautiful angel oak as we begin to close today in honor of Hilary and Danielea? Would you be willing to just maybe share a message?
Okay, let me see. Okay. So what I just said, do you have a message for people on this call? And she said, it's all about opening your heart and loving yourself. So she said, just move into that space of heart opening. That's where all the listening comes in, basically. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yay, thank you, Mary. And Mary is co-hosting with me and Pam Turson, the listening field with Canadian Fires tomorrow, 1 to 2:30. Yeah, find us on the listeningfield.life. You'll see the registration link there. And thank you so much to Hilary, Mary, to Ben, to Shrouk, who's flying in the air, and her team. Yeah, we'll see you soon.
So beautiful. Hilary, any final closing comments from you?
It's been an honor, and check out our rudimentary website. But if you're interested in getting involved in the Mad Hatter Summit or in a Taste of Wonderland, which we're running all around the world right now, please contact me, because this is a movement. It's also connected to a new documentary that's coming out, and a feature film and a publication. There's lots in the works. So please join in.
Get in there. And the Mad Hatter Summit, the link is in the chat. So that's great.
Yes.
Find out more about it. Congratulations on beautiful work and a beautiful plenary. Danielea, thank you. And bless the listening field.
Thank you. Yes. And please, reach out. We've got discovery calls that you can book if you want to find out how you can bring the nature elders into your project. And I didn't actually make this statement publicly, but Hilary is the team member with me to work with organizations and businesses. So we are the listening field team for as that work gets going. So yeah, super excited about that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.